One of the pieces that Orchestra Toronto is going to be playing in our December concert is by the Finnish composer Jean Sibelius, and it is the music that he wrote to a play called Pelléas and Mélisande. This play was written originally in 1894 by a Belgian playwright whose name was Maurice Maeterlinck, and it was extremely popular. It was played everywhere throughout Europe. If I were to sum up this play in one word, I would say symbolism. The story is very simple. It takes place in an imaginary kingdom, let's say in a medieval world. This kingdom is very dark. The king is very old, and his son Golot is looking for a wife, and one day when he's out hunting, he finds this young princess who's in this forest, and she's weeping. We don't know really anything about her except that she comes from another kingdom. We don't know how she got there. We don't know why she's weeping. But Golot immediately falls in love with her and brings her home and marries her. And shortly afterwards, she meets Golot's half-brother, much younger, whose name is Pelléas. And yes, you've guessed it, they fall in love with each other. It's this incestuous relationship, and eventually Golot becomes extremely jealous, and Melisande is pregnant. It's not clear who is the father of the child. Golot kills his half-brother, and at the end of the play, Melisande dies while giving birth. And so it's a sad story. It leaves a lot of questions. And this is why I think this particular play this theme attracted lots of composers. And one of the most famous ones was Claude Debussy, who wrote his opera Pelléas and Mélisande using this story. And now on the other end of the spectrum, I would say, would be Sibelius. Sibelius was, of course, a composer of the North. And the Swedish theater in Helsinki in 1904 decided that they would put on this play. And they turned to Sibelius to commission the music. And Sibelius ended up writing 10 pieces to be performed during the play. And it's not an opera, it's music for a play. And he conducted the orchestra in the pit for a number of the first performances. The actual music describes what goes on, and let's take a look at it. The first movement begins describing the castle of the kingdom, and it uses block chords in the strings and in the winds. It is meant to illustrate the power and the austerity of this kingdom where Melisande has been brought. The second movement is a solo for the English horn, and it describes Melisande as she is at the beginning when Golot finds her in the forest. As she's sad, she's weeping. You hear this in the melody for the English horn. And you also hear a little bit of a lighter nature that she has, this playful, childlike nature, which comes in later in the movement when the other woodwind instruments are introduced. Another movement describes a scene in the park, which is one of the really most important scenes in the play. The park scene is when Pelléas and Mélisande decide to go off one day, and they go to the park where there's a fountain, and there's a spring actually, and a grotto underneath the spring. And this is the place in the kingdom where the sun actually shines. That's why they decide to go. And as they're there, they're having fun, and they're being silly and flirtatious. And Melisande takes her wedding ring off and holds it up to the sunlight to see it glisten. and then she throws it up in the air, much to Pelléas' horror. It falls into the water, into the grotto, and disappears. And this is the point in the play where everything starts to go wrong. Because a few days later, of course, her husband, Goulot, notices that she doesn't have her wedding ring. In the music, you hear the music start to precipitate, to get faster. And all of a sudden, you can hear that something has gone wrong, but it then seems to regain its own composure and comes back to its key of F major. Another movement describes Mélisande at her spinning wheel as she spins this rune to tell the future. And the way Sibelius illustrates this is to use the viola section as they play two notes, F sharp and G. But it sounds, because they're hitting the other string all the time, there are two strings, and it feels like this spinning wheel that's a little bit off kilter. The final movement is the one which depicts Melisande on her deathbed after having tried to give birth to this child. And this is music that Sibelius wrote, which moved the first actors portraying the role of Melisande back in 1905 at the first performances, all the way through the 20th century. There's a history of actresses really having a hard time keeping it together during this music. The music itself is inspired by Grieg, particularly from the death of Asa in Peer Gynt. It's very heartfelt, and there's a point in the music where the orchestra seems to cry out. It's very personal. It describes, in a way, this sense of anger and frustration, that why did it come to this? This one person, this young, beautiful woman who has been brought into this kingdom of these dying people, this dark kingdom, was perhaps the only hope that they had to turn things around, and the possible birth of a child. All of that has come to nothing. Very Nordic, or a very northern way of looking at the world of Pelléas and Mélisande. Nordic, northern, I say northern because I think as Canadians we can certainly feel the atmospheres that exist in the music of Sibelius. It's why this music is close to us, very close to us. And so I really hope that you enjoy this performance of this very, very beautiful score. Each movement is a jewel, perfectly crafted by this brilliant composer, Jean Sibelius. Thank you for joining me.